live. Patricia, it must be a busy afternoon. What's coming out of the summit so far?
Good afternoon, Aubriel. Certainly a very busy day, or rather a busy week. As we know, the summit officially kicked off on the 10th of August, and today was the official opening of the heads of states meeting, of course, that started joining the ministers that have been here since beginning of this week, and the official handing over of the chairmanship from Swaziland to South Africa. As you have already mentioned, President Jacob Zuma now stands at the helm of the SADC region. And during the opening session, a lot of speakers who made remarks touching on some of the burning issues that need attention, that has been topping the agenda here at the SADC summit. Of course, now we're entering the second last session before we wrap up the summit tomorrow. So I'm joined by our esteemed colleague, Lehana just to pronounce his surname correctly there, who has been covering the summit with me, and he has some interesting points in terms of the speakers who made remarks during the opening session. And now we're focusing on the remarks made by the president of the African Bank, and that is Akinwumi Adesina, who touched on the importance of that bank in terms of achieving the objectives of SADC, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, Patricia, it was very interesting to note the manner in which Adesina put his speech. Firstly, by saying Africa cannot operate in the dark, simply meaning that the African Bank, Development Bank, was there to assist SADC countries. And his emphasis on the fact that his countries, as they push on, they should realize that they shouldn't just treat, taking agriculture for instance, he says don't treat agriculture as just a way of life, but agriculture should be a real business which the continent can live and live out of. So it was very interesting as well to note that when he spoke of SADC countries, he actually encouraged these countries to work hand in hand with the African Development Bank rather than to be going outside the country looking for resources, which in turn it becomes a negative way of doing business with the ADBF.
And the president of the Seychelles, Danny Faure, also had some remarks to make during that opening session. Of course, expressing confidence that he believes that the leadership in Lesotho and DRC, where there is a political conflict at the moment, he really has confidence that they will find a way to solve their problems there. But he also called for inclusiveness and regional unity in order for them to strengthen the work that SADC leaders do.
I think a very straightforward speaker. For a long time we haven't had people who could express themselves like that when delivering an address in an organization such as this one. I think what he came out clearly on was that he had a direct message to his colleagues. Mind you, this was his maiden speech, calling on his colleagues, firstly, by addressing the issue of leaders who want to stay on power even when their term of office has come to an end. I mean, he was forthright to say this should not happen, and SADC should ensure that it doesn't happen. He was very straightforward on that. And also, I think another issue that he actually spoke on was making sure that most of the countries, most of the leaders, they talk of democracy. But he said, let this democracy that we are talking about, let it be translated down to the people. Let the people feel that there's democracy, rather than heads of states just talking about the word and yet the people living a different life. I think his call as well to countries such as the DRC, Lesotho, and the DRC. I think he was also of the opinion that now that SADC has assisted these countries must ensure that what happens in the countries, rather than have fights and involve soldiers and all. Dialogue should be the main thing that takes place for them to understand each other and come to proper decisions of running a country.
Certainly, and it links to what is happening outside of this meeting. Outside, you have people from the SADC region who are protesting, saying that their interests are not represented adequately by the leaders who are gathering here.
I think to a certain extent that can be true, because you see, when leaders meet the people, they say something else, and when they come to such meetings, they make all these grand promises. And when they make those promises, when they go back to their communities, then the people say, but during the SADC meeting, this is what you said. And now here we are, we're living far from the talk that you gave. I think to a certain extent, he was very forthright.
All right, and let's turn our attention to the remarks made by the Prime Minister of Lesotho, and that is Dr. Thomas Thabane, who again came and thanked SADC for intervening in the situation in his country, saying that he's grateful that they did not give up on Lesotho, but also giving assurance that the political delegation from Lesotho will make sure that the agreement stipulated by SADC will be followed through, saying that they are committed to finding a long-lasting solution in Lesotho. What do you take from what he said?
I think he needed to reassure SADC leaders that the time has come for Lesotho to have stability. We know for a fact that Lesotho had 2 elections within a very short space of time, and that does not reflect well on the SADC countries. Now, I think his address here was to reassure his colleagues that thanks that you've helped us. And now what we are going to do from now henceforth is to make sure that we clean our yard. He spoke of his government now going to fight corruption. He spoke of his government now going to talk to the opposition and to make sure that wherever there are differences, they can sit down and settle the differences rather than have the country run in a way in which soldiers will be taking over, because we all know that lack of stability and peace in a country destroys even the little economy that the country has. So to him, it was a very good thing to reassure SADC and to thank them for what they did.
But he also appealed on the leaders to help them restructure Lesotho's electoral structure, saying that maybe that's where the problem starts. They need to look at maybe new ways on how they go to the polls, how they restructure that process. Saying that perhaps led to the political impasse in the country with parliament that had to be dissolved and so forth. Do you think that is possible? Every time, even here in South Africa, when people talk about the structure that needs to be changed to obviously represent the needs of the people, that seems to be a very sensitive issue.
Yeah, I think in most countries you find that whenever the election, the next organization that has to suffer and have fingers pointed is the Electoral Commission. So they might have had that problem first, but then the main thing about Lesotho was that you had so many different political parties. And now the issue is, if they all speak in different voices, not wanting to unite, the chances of country having stability is actually none. But then the appeal that he made to SADC was also to encourage his fellow countrymen back there that, gentlemen, we have to sit down and talk. This is to bring the country forward. This is to ensure that the country's economy grows. Because Lesotho is landlocked. They need to work hard. They need to understand each other. They need to have a formidable government in order to grow the economy, because they need the assistance of outside. And no investors can come into a country which does not have stability.
Let's come back home. South Africa is now the official chair of SADC. President Jacob Zuma is at the helm. He also made his vision known. He touched a lot on the economy, saying that African minerals need to be developed right here at home, need to be processed here to benefit the people of the African continent. What stood out for you?
That's the talk of the of SADC and the African Union, beneficiation. We have products here, but we have to export them. And having to import them, we import them at a very high price. So the emphasis would then be, let's work on our raw materials so that we can benefit from them and let the people of the country benefit. But I think you also emphasize quite a lot on industrialization and infrastructure development, which are key elements in ensuring that the country's economy grows fast.
Right, thank you so much there, my colleague Lehana Tsotedzi, just giving us his thoughts on the SADC summit here and what the leaders who have been giving us their thoughts here at the summit have been touching on. We continue to, of course, engage and delve into the issues that dominate the summit here. And right now, we turn our eyes again to Swaziland. As you know, they officially stepped down as the chair of the SADC region, and they passed on the baton to South Africa.